Why do you think fake traffic has escalated so sharply? Is AI really the main thing to blame?
With AI, it's just so much easier to do. You don't need to be a hardcore coder to write a script anymore. But the other thing to bear in mind, not all bots are bad. It could be legitimate AI agents conducting research on product,
What are your thoughts on like distinguishing human digital behavior from these like hyper realistic bots that are inside our funnels?
analyzing behavioral signals like mouse movement, scroll activity, fingerprinting techniques. That's like looking at device characteristics, browser
Hmm.
properties, network signatures. There are little giveaways. I think marketing and marketing ops has a good chance here to have a seat at the table. We're no longer living in a world where all bots are bad.
What's up, everyone? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Jordan Resnick, Senior Director of Marketing Operations at Check. In this episode, we demystify go to market security and the fake traffic surge. We talk about how to detect bot traffic and how to reduce fake traffic and lead pollution. We also cover how to calculate the revenue impact of fake traffic and how marketing ops should adapt to machine customers. All that and a bunch more stuff after a quick word from two of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's KNAK, and tell them we sent you. This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new Warehouse Native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse Native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. Jordan, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Let's get into it.
So, GTM security, I feel like it's a relatively new term. I was coming up with a bunch of different ideas to chat with you on the podcast, but you're at Check. You guys are obviously really deep into this space. So, we're kind of like framing issues around fake traffic as something that can derail a lot of marketing performance and not just like top line traffic, but also revenue. And there's a lot of security concerns there. Maybe we can start there. Like, what does GTM security strategy look like from the perspective of a marketing ops team, and how is it kind of different from fraud prevention?
Sure. Well, obviously, fraud prevention is a part of it. I think the overall way to look at it is it's taking a more business-centric view of security. You think of security traditionally being very risk averse, protects the company at all costs. Um, Whereas GTM security is looking at things, or GTM, yeah, go-to-market security is looking at things more weighing up risk and reward. And also, obviously, most importantly, it's looking at the go-to-market journey. So whether it's from acquisition to interactions and touch points, down to purchases and follow-up. While traditional security and fraud is all about attacks, taking down a website entirely, ransom notices, things like that. Go-to-market security is more just what's the impact on the go-to-market efforts. Looking at invalid traffic, how is that messing around with our analytics? fake form leads, and whether or not we're sending them to sales. And even, as I mentioned earlier, like acquisition. So, you're putting money into driving people to your website or to your physical business, um, particularly online anyway. How many of those people that you're driving are real people and actually able to buy? And then does that then pollute your funnel as it goes along later? We're looking at things like lost revenue and impact there. And so, while it's not necessarily as stringent as traditional security, it still plays an important role and goes hand in hand with it.
And I feel like it's getting worse and worse, right? With AI and a bunch of other stuff. Like in the state of fake traffic report that Check did, kind of revealed that 18% of all web traffic was deemed fake, as a big jump from the previous years. Why do you think fake traffic has escalated so sharply? Like, what's going on here? Is AI really the main thing to blame?
Yeah, I think so. I think AI-powered automation is sort of the main culprit these days. There's also, of course, financial incentives for the bad actors out there.
Yeah.
Um, but quite frankly, with AI, it's just so much easier to do.
Hmm.
You don't need to be a hardcore coder to write a script anymore. You can get AI to do it for you. Um, there's also an incentive even from the major players. Like, the more visits you have on your website, there isn't necessarily an incentive to hide that from you because it looks good. But the other thing to bear in mind that I like to think about and check is obviously concerned with is not all bots are bad. And so
Hmm.
even though things might show up as a part of this fake traffic, it could be legitimate AI agents conducting research on products.
Hmm.
It could be down the road, and even now, we've heard stories about how people are configuring AI agents to do purchasing for them, purchase orders. Lots of people may be shopping on Amazon through bots for all we know.
Hmm.
And so, why not? And traditionally, it's just not something we've had to deal with. And so, yeah, certainly so-called fake traffic is on the up, but most importantly, we have to distinguish between good fake traffic, I suppose, and bad.
Right. Yeah, like machine customers. I do have a question there on that a bit later, but this whole topic, I don't know if you are familiar with the dead internet theory. It's kind of like a pessimistic conspiratorial view of all of this fake traffic. It was posted in a form like way back in 2021, but it's a conspiracy theory that was written or it's been kicking around since like 2016. And basically, it goes like the majority of internet content and activity has been generated by bots and AI rather than humans, and this manipulation purportedly orchestrated by governments and corporations control public perception, blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know about the gov corp angles to this, but flash forward to almost like 10 years, there's a lot of reports indicating that the majority of internet traffic is in fact bots, and in a lot of cases bad bots, not the ones that are shopping and purchasing or researching. So like some of the reports I've seen, like there's a lot of different percentages out there. It's like 37%, 51%. Acros Lab says that in 2024, 73% of internet traffic was bad bots. Maybe that theory wasn't that far off after all. What are your thoughts there?
Um, Yeah, I don't know whether there are governments or corporations behind it. I will say I tend to be very interested in all these theories ever since I was young. I'm not one to just accept when I'm told something that that's the way it is. Wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. I mean, certainly governments and corporations have been caught time and again doing things that they shouldn't and saying one thing but actually doing the other. So certainly not surprising. I don't have any hard proof of that. What I do think we do have hard proof of is regardless of how it's come to be, certainly more and more of what we're seeing on the internet is created through bots. Um, Again, specifically even the bad bots. Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that at all. I mean, it's hard to say. You even see it on LinkedIn, everybody complaining about, bot comments and
Hmm.
bot posts. I- it's also hard to like when I think about it, it's like, ultimately there was some human behind it, um, behind these bots, and what are their motives? What are they after? At the end of the day, again, until like more concrete evidence comes out, I don't know who's behind it, but I certainly would agree. No, I don't think it's too far off. In
Yeah.
fact, you go to any company's website and it's a fine line between just sort of bad marketing copy written by a human, or is ChatGPT writing all this stuff?
Hmm.
You never know. Not that, by the way, I think that it's wrong to use these tools, particularly as a first draft or something like that. I used to work in content marketing way back when, before I got into marketing ops. Whereas in the past, I might have used writers to write a first draft. Now, if I still had that business, sure, I'd use ChatGPT to hammer out a first draft for me. What I have a problem with is taking that first draft and just posting it, and not actually applying human thought, human consciousness to. And also, coming back to the conspiracy thing, a lot of the times, what ChatGPT and others it's giving you, it could be blatantly making stuff up,
Hmm.
blatantly lying, so to speak. And I've seen this when I've used it time and again, whether that's to help with some coding or even just writing small things. So yeah, using your human powers to question things, um, take a critical eye to what you're reading and the numbers and metrics you're looking at, I think is vital and will never go beyond that.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that like one of the ways to decipher if traffic was fake or not, at least a couple of years back when I was doing this in the house, was to kind of look at activity logs in the marketing automation platform. When a user performs 325 events in like 10 seconds, there used to be like clear behavioral signals that it was a bot activity. But bots are starting to look way more human from a digital footprint perspective. Nowadays, marketing ops teams are facing like hyper realistic bots that are mimicking genuine user behavior, even like watching videos, clicking ads, like interacting with forums, using the mouse to kind of like do some of these things too, like mimicking the mouse tracking behavior. Basically, like they're creating fake engagement, and it distorts a lot of the metrics that we then give to our GTM teams around ROI and conversion rates. And whereas like it makes it really hard to pinpoint if it's a bot or if it's a real human. What are your thoughts on like distinguishing human digital behavior from these like hyper realistic bots that are inside our funnels?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a real problem, no doubt about it. Speaking of mouse, it's a cat and mouse game. I mean, like as detection picks up its game, the bad actors then develop something, and it gets worse and worse. I think, obviously working for Check, I mean, we make products that help to distinguish between what's a bot and what's not. Um, depending on what sort of detection engine you're using and or approaches, you can look at things. But even without software or products, I tend to look for like what's not explainable in analytics. So like looking for traffic patterns, or like for example, kind of like what you were saying, but more like, are they moving through the site more quickly than a human buyer would be? Are they clicking on everything in a pattern that just doesn't make sense? Are they consuming more than like maybe they're reading pages that you can only get to if you have the link already, not from Google, or it's not in your, well, I mean, I suppose it would be in your sitemap, but maybe it's not in your menu.
Mm.
Um, so anytime that there's anomalies going on, or there are anomalies going on, especially if it's done in a shorter time, like if you have access to how long that so-called person has been on your website, yet they're consuming way more pages, getting to all those different areas, then it's more likely that it's bot traffic. Now, taking it a step further, we want to look at whether that bot traffic is legit or not. And I don't necessarily know how to do this without Check. I know that with Check, we can see whether it's like an AI agent that's
Hmm.
scanning the site, or a good crawler, or a nefarious actor. So, being that I work there, I get to use these products. But regardless of how you're coming at it, just trying to determine A, whether it's a bot or not, and then B, okay, is this a good bot or a bad one? The main thing though is looking for again at those patterns, because as we all know, more and more like these bots tend to be able to get around captchas and whatnot, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. Really trying to drill down as best you can to determine the source, and then yeah, whenever you spot like an anomaly, you then dive a bit deeper into it, look at the time spent on the site, where it's been looking, and then make your determinations from there.
Yeah, some of the stuff is easier said than done for folks that don't use a check or kind of
Yeah,
deal with this stuff manually.
yeah.
I wasn't aware of some of these solutions, and kind of prep for this episode. Discovered a lot of them, but like the biggest problem for me with this whole area for mobs folks is that like fake traffic leads to fake leads, and bot interactions can skew a lot of funnel metrics and KPIs, and it makes your campaigns seem way more successful than they actually are. Email marketers are kind of new, like used to this world. Like open rates have never been a reliable metric, ever since Apple changed a lot of stuff on MPP. But like I guess the whole point of this episode is like, Jordan, like, what can we do to counter this crap? Like, in my research for the episode, I came up with a bunch of solutions, and I know Check does some of these things, but I'm curious if we can unpack some of these, get your take on them. Maybe we can go through them one by one. So I'll list them all, and we can tackle them one by one. So the first one is just like simple non AI stuff, like data hygiene, validation checkpoints, on like forums and stuff like that. Then we get a bit more complex with things that are around like design and UX, like multi-layered security using like CAPTCHA or multi-factor authentication. None of these things are new. Like folks are kind of aware of these things, but then we get into things like AI-driven fraud prevention. So analyzing behavioral signals like mouse movements, scroll activity to kind of pinpoint what's a bot, what's not a bot. I know there's some folks doing like fingerprinting techniques. Then we've got dynamic JavaScript-based tracking pixels that are collecting engagement data that's really hard for bots to mimic. There's a whole bunch of other things like real-time scoring and API level traffic filtering, post-conversion lead verification tools, and then the last one is federated learning, so enabling collaboration across orgs and sharing some of the learning across like different companies. Do you want to tackle these like one by one? Is there like one you specifically want to chat about? Just like leaving that up to you here.
No, let's go through them. So yeah, assuming that someone's coming at this. So, when I say Check makes products to solve these things, I'm looking at it primarily with an enterprise
Right.
focus. Like you have to really assess like, all right, forget about traditional security, just with regards to go-to-market security, how much is this really affecting my organization? And so, I've worked anywhere from a tiny, like I had my own small business. I've worked at very small businesses. Either they were my clients or I was employed by them. I've also worked for large enterprises before. This problem is really different depending on how big your organization is and how important it is that every single lead makes its way to sales, whether it's junk or not. And so the
Right.
reason why I'm giving this preamble is if you're listening and you're working at a small 0 to 100-person company and you're only getting 10 leads a week, obviously it's not going to make sense to invest
Right.
$1 billion and a lot of time into preventing it. Whereas if you work for a large corporation that's getting 100 to 1,000 people signing up every day, um, then we have a major problem, because it's not just the fake leads that are signing up, or screwing up your ad budget or visiting your website, potentially taking it down. But also, furthermore, it's eating up data. I mean, every single user that gets created is
Yeah.
sitting in your database, you're paying for it. So the ROI starts to become more and more relevant when it comes to pursuing GTM security solutions. All that being said, of course, there are ways to do it without purchasing software. It's much like anything else. You can always build out of the box. Now, whether it's going to be as far along or as easy to use or as nice of a solution, I couldn't say. Um, but looking at the solutions you've come up with, the general approaches, what was the first one here? So data hygiene, validation, checkpoints. So um, yeah, of course. Like the simplest thing anyone can do, whether you're using Marketo, HubSpot, things like this, turn on the bot filtering. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing how many of us don't even do that. Now, is it the most sophisticated solution? No. Of course, it's going to let bots through, um, but it's a start. Another thing, I don't know if it falls into this category, but if you have the ability to, again, if you're selling to larger companies, I mean, block free email domains. That's an easy one. Another thing, the senior email marketing manager on our MOPS team at Check likes to do is just look for pattern. I've been talking about patterns a lot, but a lot of the time the spam signups they have like a exclamation point at in them or something like that. I'm making up random examples. So as you start to see fake users, look for the patterns. Is there always a certain character that you wouldn't expect? And I feel like that may not be exactly the category you're after, but I just feel like these are some of the simple things that you can do and just like block them from your instance altogether. Another thing in this category I would say is working with your security team on your general website security can help before they even get a chance to fill out your form, assuming they're front-end bots. So like for example, like if you use WordPress, there are plenty of plugins that stop spam comments from being made on your website. I'm sure it's the same principle applies to filling out forms. So things like that. Those are the simplest homegrown things that you can do. Moving on to the next thing, I was taking notes, CAPTCHA and multi-factor author. So the thing with CAPTCHA, we know that good bots can, well, bad bots that are good at what they do
Yeah.
can override CAPTCHAs.
Right.
Does that mean you shouldn't use them? No. I mean, everything helps. You still lock your door at night, even though some thieves can break in. I mean, that doesn't mean you leave it I mean, unless you're in Canada like us and everybody leaves their door unlocked, allegedly. But yeah, so of course you want to put everything forward, put your best foot forward. So yeah, CAPTCHAs work to a certain extent. Are they a complete solution? No, but they can work. But the other thing you have to bear in mind with all these solutions, particularly things like CAPTCHA, as I'm sure you know, is that it then starts creating more friction
Yeah.
for the end users. And so you always want to balance like, all right, I'm going to put this CAPTCHA here to stop the bots, but then how many legitimate users am I losing because CAPTCHAs are frustrating or they're just blocking them out? Or me, I
Yeah.
use Firefox. CAPTCHAs always give me trouble. Um, so how many, good thing for most companies, I'm persistent, but you never know. There might have been a form or two that I've just abandoned.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's something that, if you put your security hat on, maybe traditional security IT departments might be like, no, we need this. It's, protection at all costs. Whereas GTM security is a little bit more like, hey, are there solutions like CAPTCHA that don't actually impact? And that leads me to the next one. Uh, well, not necessarily the next one in your list, but just playing off that idea of the CAPTCHA is like, what about honeypot fields?
Right.
So hidden fields on forms that only a bot is going to fill out. So it makes it look like there's a field to fill out, but like a human that goes to your website is not going to see a field, not going to fill
Hmm.
out that field. And so any form that comes with that field filled in is a bot. And so these are little tricks that you can do. Again, Check makes products that the whole benefit is that they work in the back end in real time, and it eliminates that friction point. But that's how I look at it. Your next one, okay. Analyzing behavioral signals like mouse movement, scroll activity. I don't personally know how to do this in real time without Check. Maybe it's possible, maybe it
Hmm.
isn't. Definitely something you can do after the fact, though. And then based on that, perhaps block IP addresses from coming to
Right.
your website in the first place. Um, Fingerprinting techniques, that's an interesting one. That's like looking at device characteristics, browser
Hmm.
properties, network signatures. Again, same as the last one. Sure, great to do if you have the capability to do it. I am not a developer. I mean, like I know how to code a little bit. Obviously working in marketing ops, building websites, CSS, PHP, whatever. But I don't really know how to do that in real time. But again, you can work with your data science team, your security team, um, particularly after after the fact, to look into signs that digital fingerprints that give away whether something's a bad bot, and then blocking in future. Um, I don't see. I mean, that's a good example of one that's happening behind the scenes. Is not going to impact front end traffic. Um, what else do we have here? Excluding suspicious traffic sources. Yeah, of course. Why not? But again, you need the ability to detect where the traffic's coming from in the first place. So a lot of these things, I would say, without a platform like Check, are going to be like, you put your site up for a while, there's a learning period, you look at all these signals behind the scenes with bigger brains than mine, people that can actually identify these things, and then you implement a plan of attack or, well, a plan of defense. All right, we're going to block anytime someone comes to the website using an Apple computer, but a browser that nobody on Apple would ever use, we're just going to block
Hmm.
automatically. Or like for another one, like I don't know, you can have things like supposedly someone's coming on an iPhone, but they have no browsers on their iPhone. Like there are little giveaways that these bots use that you wouldn't necessarily see until you dig really deep into the what's going on behind the scenes. And then, yes, of course, worth blocking, but also always worth bearing in mind, um, how big of a problem is it really? Is it really impacting revenue, or is it just inflating your numbers? Can you present to your superiors like, hey, here are our visits, but actually we know 30% roughly are fake. So
Yeah.
just do the mental math. It's not really 100 people, it's 70 people. Um,
Hmm.
and so, but really, when it comes down to pipeline creation and opportunities, we're not seeing any junk having effects there. And so it's not worth our time versus hey, we work at a huge enterprise and we have thousands of people signing up with junk leads and it's taking up space in our instance and our salespeople are getting mad at us. Nobody trusts MQLs anymore.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Also, by the way, when I worked at a smaller company, I would just validate things manually. It's like, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
this looks like an MQL. It has a decent email address, a real phone number. It's not I don't know, Jeff at Amazon.com. Like you can usually tell if when by the time it gets down in the funnel far enough that it's requesting a demo, you should be able to identify whether it's fake or not. And it's just whether you have the appetite to look at it manually or not.
This episode was brought to you by Mammoth Growth. Ever feel like your data is lying to you? Like you're making big bets on numbers you don't even trust? Everyone talks about garbage in, garbage out, but almost no one actually fixes the garbage. That's where Mammoth Growth comes in. They're the fastest AI powered data team on the planet. They build production ready data architecture that turns your fragmented customer data into one unified, trustworthy source of truth fast. Most companies spend months trying to get answers. Mammoth Growth compresses weeks of analytics engineering into minutes using a multi-agent AI workflow. No rework, no broken dashboards, just clean, reliable data models you can act on with confidence. Calendly, Siemens, TED, and hundreds of other brands trust Mammoth Growth to fuel measurable growth. Check them out at mammothgrowth.com to see how they make bad data disappear.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero.
2 field forms. Complete context, instant scheduling. Finally, you get to pick all 3 without a single line of code. Introducing native enrichment by Revenue Hero. Plug in Clearbit, Crust Data, Apollo, or stack all 3. Enrich all the data you need instantly on submit. Stack your enrichment providers, waterfall your way to clarity. Determine qualification and meeting routing based on enriched information. Layer it onto your current distribution logic. Book more meetings with your qualified buyers. Get started at revenuehero.io.
So imagine this example, like your CRM's lead queue is suddenly full of form submission. It looks really good. Sales team is excited, but a lot of them are gibberish or like fraudulent entries. The sales reps are basically spending a ton of time or spent a ton of time this week, like chasing ghosts, or real prospects are getting overlooked or kind of falling through the cracks. And, one of the solutions here is we talked about having this like instant qualification tool. Like one of the sponsors of the show, Revenue Hero, you basically can't, like, instead of just having a form, you book something and then you wait, you get a thank you page, you wait for a call back. Like Revenue Hero on the form lets you like book something directly into a rep's calendar, and there's like a bunch of qualification fields. So, bots will have a much harder time answering those qualification questions and selecting a meeting time in that UI. But I'm curious to ask you, like, what other things can like RevOps or marketing ops professionals do that you think aren't like super just for enterprise stuff that maybe we haven't touched on yet, and like how can they build fail safes that we're not sending sales teams a bunch of crap and they're not distracted by invalid leads.
So yeah, I mean, beyond the things we discussed before, like blocking certain email domains, captchas, honeypot fields, you could have like even simple JavaScript validation rules. So like, for example, um, again, I'm not bringing this up because I know how to implement this necessarily, but there are people that do. So JavaScript that immediately, if someone spends a certain amount of time on the form or has odd-looking mouse movements, it won't let them actually get to the booking part of things, or it'll send them to a fake page, making them think that they've booked, but they haven't. You could even use JavaScript validation rules for things like, looking for your ICP. Like, hey, if the customer company size based on your data enrichment platform, if you have one, is not a certain size or is self-selected, somebody selects they only have 1 to 10 employees, you know what? You don't route them to the reps. You just route them an email that says, thanks for filling it out. Maybe we're not for you, or why don't you try our smaller product or whatever it is. There are things like that. There are things that I think people don't necessarily have a good appetite for, but nonetheless work, like double opt-in. I mean, no bot
Hmm.
is going to fill out a demo request form and then respond to the email saying like, yes, that really was me. I'd like to book. Um, so these are the types of things that I, in my own small business, way back, I'm thinking even 15 years ago, like I made people put their email address in twice in the form, and then after they booked, I hadn't, you could set up an autoresponder that's like, hey, you know, nothing personal, but I don't have time for spammers. Are you real? In much nicer language. Or, hey, it was great to hear from you. I'm really looking forward to meeting. Just wanted to confirm it was actually 3 p.m. or whatever. I don't know. So, and then if they don't respond, well, no meeting happens. And so, but you, again, coming back to that idea before, you have to look at the appetite your organization has for missed legitimate leads. Like there are
Hmm.
plenty of legitimate people that just won't respond to that email, um, and you miss them. And so you have to look at, like, when you're implementing any of these so-called solutions, do I want to go that far? Similar to how you would look at like what kind of friction do you want to introduce to the person filling out your form, and that can go. I'm not just talking about CAPTCHA, but even just having many fields, right? Like we have lots of
Hmm.
demand gen people that want our forms to have just like email address only, which makes it very difficult to assess the quality of the lead. That's where data validation, or sorry, data enrichment programs come in. Smart form fills and all that fun stuff. Again, it's a balance of how much time and money do you want to spend on this? How much friction do you want to introduce? And then assessing those types of different options accordingly.
What advice do you have for folks to like assign a revenue number to this problem if they're trying to like create urgency around
Mm,
the fake traction issue with like C-suite teams? Is there like I know
yeah.
Check did some reporting on this. Like I found one that was like a couple of years back now, like 2022, reports that there was an estimated like 35.7 billion in ad spend that was wasted on fake fraudulent traffic. I think like the ads angle to this, like if you're listening to this, you're like, we need to do something about this. I just don't know how. People don't really care about it. If you're spending a lot of money in ads, do you think that like ads is a good argument to bring to the table?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, to use that cliche. Let's look at ads first. So if 20 to 40% of the internet is fake, then by logical conclusion, 20 to 40% of those clicks that you're paying for are never going to buy
Yeah.
because they're fake. Um, Now, there's a certain level of, you could probably reach out to your support rep at Google. Don't quote me on this. Like, there's probably ways that you can reduce it a little bit. I don't think it's as or it's certainly not as robust as Check has a product called Check Acquisition, which can reduce those numbers significantly. Can I promise that the human replacements instead of those bots are actually going to buy your product? No, of course not. But if you owned a store and 30% of the people in there were robots that were never going to buy, do you want them clogging up your cashier's line, looking at your products? No, of course not. You want as many actual humans in there as possible. So with regards to your question specifically, you can just look at the latest figures of fake traffic. Don't take Check's word for it. It's out there all over the place. Forrester, Gartner, whoever, all those companies you quoted. You just take that figure and you assume, all right, well, of that figure, let's say it's 20%. If we had humans instead of those 20%, how much money would we save on our ad spend, and how much money might we then get in the end? So for example, if you know that for every 100 Google ad clicks, you get 10 purchases, I'm totally making this up. So for every 100 you get 10, well, that means really for every, let's say 70, you get 10. And so your conversion rate increases dramatically once you start factoring in the fake traffic. And so you can then make a case like, all right, well, I can add another, let's say 25 to 30 legitimate users. And if 70 turns into 10, then again, I'm not that good at math in my head, but 1/7 buy, so 1/7 of 30 is how much? And you can show that missing revenue. That's specifically with regards to acquisition. But even just looking down the funnel, you can apply the same approach. Like of every MQL, like how many of them are legitimate versus spam, and then you reduce or remove the spam numbers, replace them with humans. Your conversion goes way up the rates, and that's, I think, an easy argument to make to the C-suite or your CMO, your CRO, to explain how it works. But also at the same time, again, you want to look at, like, if you are going to implement some sort of solution, make sure it's not canceling out legitimate good bots.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it's a really fine line. You need to make sure you don't just blanket block everything, because you're going to be missing out on the other side of the equation, like we were discussing, AI bots that are conducting research for legitimate shoppers and whatnot, which would be a major problem.
Yeah. I want to ask you about when bots make us look too good from a marketing standpoint. Like, this one's a bit tricky. I'm sure a lot of folks have been here. We have this idea, this campaign is born, we're launching it, results are starting to roll in, and the results look really good, and you're pumped, and you share about it internally on Slack. People think you're a genius for that idea. It's coming to fruit. But the next day you're kind of digging through the activity logs and it's a nightmare of bots, and you were way too early to celebrate. And now you kind of have to claw back and say like, yeah, the traffic we drove wasn't exactly as high, but it's still good. Like, how do you tackle this? Like, what's your take on how ops teams should be handling performance reporting when the numbers are inflated by junk and you kind of realize this after? The CMO still wants to like have that slide sharing like some of the results he had before. Did you deal with that before? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I look at this like any, as we say in MOPS, a moops, so to speak.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, yeah, you can be fooled by this, but once you know that it's a possibility, don't go sharing your numbers before you've looked into whether, but like it's okay to make that mistake once, maybe twice, but like now that everybody's talking about this out there, or at least it seems to be a known issue, let's not be so quick to share good reports. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, because you're looking at more like, okay, well, assuming you have shared this report and then you find out after the fact, what do you do? I'll get to that in a minute. But first and foremost, I think it's really important to be thoroughly questioning everything you see before sending it on, and reporting and gloating about how wonderful such and such a thing is. Also, another thing, like just for me in my career in MOPS, is really top of the funnel numbers. It's easy to celebrate them as a win, but do they really matter? Not so much to me. Like, we should be looking at things like revenue and pipeline creation, I think, because ultimately that's what the business is looking at. They don't really care how many MQLs you drive, or at least in my experience. you might be judged on it, but like in having conversations with the person who gives me that goal, we always ultimately come to the conclusion that, well, it doesn't matter. It's how many of those MQLs convert to opportunities. And so I would be weary about sharing the fantastic visits numbers that I might have gotten on a certain campaign. All that said, if you do share early and you do find out that picture isn't as rosy as you thought, I personally, I like to come clean. I'm not, uh, there are some things that I consider myself good at. One of them is not pretending like something is not the way it is. So,
Yeah.
like, I would rather if I sent an email to the database and instead of sending it to, like I sent it to all the unsubscribed instead of only send to subscribed, I'm gonna tell my boss, hey, look, I screwed up. I sent this out. We need to send a correction. Similarly, if I share a report that says we had 30% success rate and 10 billion visits, and then I find out a week later, data science pulls me aside and is like, hey, we noticed these anomalies. Actually, it's more like 2% and only 100 visitors. You have to own up to it. I think that's the only way to gain trust. Maybe you'll suffer for it, but well, it was your mistake. So I feel like there's no way around it. And if you happen to find yourself in a circumstance in which you work for a CMO that still demands that you present success, present what you now know to be a failure as a success. Personally speaking, I wouldn't want to be working in that particular environment. But that's just me. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of changing where you work. So then it's just a matter of coming to an agreement. Like maybe you could alter your slides to show like, here's what the numbers were. And now that we've investigated with data science, like here's the adjusted numbers, but it still shows this, that, and the other. Paint a rosy picture, however you like it. But I personally would come clean about it.
Yeah, it's great advice. I love your point about trust too, and it's okay to make that mistake once, maybe twice max. But in this whole world of like fake traffic and bots, I feel like I don't know, I have a bit more room for acceptance of mistakes because the rules change all the time. Like when you send an email to people that were unsubscribed, like that's if you do that again, like it was the same situation, right? Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
effed up twice.
Right.
But if you like presented a report and you didn't take out all of the fake bots, like you learned about it, you went back in the report, you're filtering out folks in the honeypot field, and the next time you're more confident about it and you're sharing it, but then like you discover this new thing
Yeah.
or like the bot changed the behavior and now it's this. And so like there's this constantly changing world. And like I guess the lesson there for folks is before you get trigger happy and sharing that result, like just double check things, especially if it's something a bit more complex. Like this goes for any SQL queries, like double check with the data team there. But I did have this fun question around like the erosion of trust. Like when you're continuously dealing with fake traffic inside your tools, it does create this sense of like trust erosion and internal confidence in data drops when you're the person doing that reporting and sharing the reports. Like it almost feels like you have to take that personally. Like the trust in your ability to confidently report, it lowers a little bit. Like, and it makes teams like second guess their decisions. You're defending budgets, you question everything. Well, what are your thoughts on like this psychological effect on marketers and analysts when you can't really trust your numbers and it impacts the org alignment and morale also, right? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Um, I think that's spot on. I think there's a huge, huge impact. When I'm presenting numbers, I not only would investigate to the ends of the earth whether they're correct or not, but as you mentioned, like, look, we are humans, and the bots and the humans behind these bots are constantly coming up with new ways to fool us. So I think it's important to present it as this is what we know today. Here are the numbers. Here are all the things we put in place to filter out bots. Obviously, if you have the budget for it and the buy-in from the org, use one of the checks. I make no commission, by the way. But use the tools you have available to you. But even without those things, when you're presenting, it really is a fine line to keep confidence up, but at the same time be honest and say like, here are all the things we've done. Can I guarantee you 100% that this is, there aren't false numbers and fake bots in there? No, I can't,
Yeah.
but I'm fairly certain, and here's why, and here are the steps we've taken, and that's why I believe we can trust, more or less, these are the results. The other thing I always look at is, and I made a post about this on LinkedIn. You know, I don't think it's healthy or correct to believe in the numbers and attribution in and of themselves, anyways, even without the
Mm.
fake bots. And what I mean by that is, in that post, I was talking about how when I was a kid, my dad would get corporate company tickets. He'd take me to the Leafs game.
Yeah, I did see
And
that
yeah,
post.
and there's always like this little ad where this moving company was like, "Hey, it's the move of the game," and they brought someone from the worst seats in the house to the best, and
Yeah.
everybody was cheering. And then the next commercial break, they show it was usually a kid and their parent. They show them like all happy in their new great seats right behind the bench or whatever it was. Now that happened when I was like 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. And now I'm of an old age. When I need to move, I'm always thinking about that company. Now, when I phone that company or I search for them and I come through as organic search, their attribution dashboards are going to show me as organic search or direct traffic, or I phone them. They're not going to show that campaign from an embarrassing long number of years ago. They're not going to show that. So, and this has nothing to do with fake bots. So, when I look at things like attribution and analytics, are they useful? 100%. Should they be the be all and end all and you make decisions blindly based on them? No, I don't think so. And so I think in that context, like the rise of the fake web, it definitely has an impact. It's worse now than it used to be. But that doesn't mean we can't use those figures to like help us make decisions. It's just, again, coming back to that concept of actually using logic and thought and human reasoning. We should look at the numbers, take them with a grain of salt, and then apply. Like, if you can see time after time and campaign after campaign that certain things are working and certain things are bringing in numbers, then, well, you're onto something, obviously. So yeah, it's difficult to maintain that psychological surety and trust in numbers, but I think if you can preface it with, I think these are reasonably accurate, and treat them that way, then you can have decent, honest conversations and move on from there.
Yeah, love your advice there. It's almost like before you present something, you have like an asterisk next to the number and you say, I didn't just like pull this myself. I
Right.
validated that number in the query with this person and that person. And it's like, if it ends up being wrong, you weren't the only person that was wrong.
Yeah.
You, like multiple people that you checked with were also wrong there. I'm sure like anyone listening has dealt with this. Like when you're dealing with data that lives in a bunch of different places. And like I was at a startup where we were using Looker as our BI tool, but when it came to like the conversion funnel, we had all of that in Amplitude. But when it came to actual like reporting data and campaign data, that was in our marketing automation platform. And so we were trying to centralize all that stuff in Looker, but the numbers weren't matching from one tool to the next. And so, like when you get confidence in a number, you can still put like an asterisk next to it and say like, this is the path that I took to get to that number. I can't be 100% certain that it's correct, but I did my best, and
Hmm.
maybe we'll get more information and we understand that it's not the perfect number. But I think your advice is spot on there. Jordan, we're getting close on time, so I do want to like save some time to chat about AI. We kind of tease this up throughout the conversation here, but this whole topic of machine customers, like Check has highlighted cases where fully autonomous like procurement systems place large B2B orders without any human intervention. A lot of folks talk about this as like the future and it could happen, but you guys have evidence that this is in place today. Some folks are doing this. What changes do you think marketing and sales ops need to make to accommodate these machine customers? Should CRMs and automation workflows treat them differently from human leads? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question for our time, so to speak, until the next best thing is invented. But I think the biggest change is like a mental shift. Just understanding, like we all come to it from this perspective of all bots are bad. We need to block them at all costs. Um, I think marketing and marketing ops has a good chance here to have a seat at the table and start bringing to people's attention across the organization, particularly IT, security, sales, everyone. We can start like, hey, we're in the trenches here. We're the ones seeing these numbers and data science, of course. We're seeing these numbers. We also are aware, keeping on top of the trends, like what you mentioned, like in that article, how agents are conducting research, even conducting purchases. We need to start communicating that around and get people on board and get them to understand that we're no longer living in a world where all bots are bad. Some are good. Here are the examples of how and why. These are the reasons why we don't want to have a blanket block anymore. And get security as a partner. Like, they're not your enemy. Like, we have the same aims, sort of. Of course, we don't want bad actors on the website, but at the same time, if they don't, we need to start sharing material with them and get them to understand that, hey, like, here's the percentage of our customers that are already using, or we project might be using AI moving forward. And so we need to adjust our security measures accordingly. And, it's never good bringing up suggestions without something to back it up. So having ready-made solutions, things to talk about, like what we've been talking about earlier today, top of mind, showing examples, communicating with the MOPS community is quite open. There's lots of these discussions going on in various MOPS Slack groups and LinkedIn and whatnot. It's not hidden, like there's no secret here. And so, yeah, it's really, for me, again, just coming back to it, it's more of a mind shift type of thing. Do I have all the answers as to how to identify good versus bad? Personally, no. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try and work with the people that do. Again, just putting it out there so that everybody's on the same page and understands the problem we're facing here and why, in my opinion, anyways, it's crucial not to just carry on with the old traditional ways of security and plugins and whatnot that just like outright ban something as soon as it seems like a machine, because I really think you're then, as the evidence and articles that I've read show, I think you're going to be missing out on genuine prospects and customers.
Yeah, totally agree. One of the things that makes this interesting as like a topic is that there's like this idea of responsibility here. Like, does this fall under the IT team? Does it fall under the marketing team or the data team or even some of the engineers, right? Like, it's become this thing that it spans department now, like fake traffic, bot signups, junk leads. It's a problem that crosses boundaries between marketing and IT and data team. How do you think marketing ops leaders should be working with their colleagues in security or IT or on the data team to combat like fake traffic and bots? Are we overdue for like shared KPIs or like routine funnel audits with the security lens? What are your thoughts there? How have you tackled this?
Um, I would say two things, two main points for me. One, shared KPIs, I'm not a big fan of, only because I believe that security teams in particular, like their end game, their goal is to prevent bad stuff at all costs. So how they don't, as far as I know, they're not typically judged on how much revenue and pipeline they're
Right.
creating.
Yeah.
And so, whereas marketing, almost everywhere I've ever worked, sits either aside or under, unfortunately, sales, depending on where you are. And we could have a whole other discussion on that. Usually it sits next to, alongside, as part of the go-to market. And so, anyone part of the GTM org is by definition going to have different KPIs. That's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. But the second point, though, that you did mention, which is collaboration, essentially, yeah, I do think it's good to have routine, like web traffic, funnel audits, especially if you work at a large organization where you have like a data science department. In particular, you can get them on the call, marketing ops, maybe even someone from sales, and security IT, have a regular cadence, whether that's monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, even if it's just annually. But you come prepared, like show, okay, here are our visits, here are our leads, MQLs, SQLs, opportunities, how much of this is junk, compare it with what they're seeing, talk about what kind of security is being enacted, is it actually impacting the funnel or not? But just again, kind of like the previous topic we were just discussing, like, and also I agree with you, it's not, I don't think this is something that like MOPs should be tackling by themselves.
Mhm.
Like, no way. Um, I think it's in everyone's interest to work on it together. I just think that there's like a little bit of extra work that's required to convince the traditional security IT people that like, hey, um, there's a big seat at the table for you guys here, and we definitely need your help to prevent junk from coming to the website. But can you also work with us a little to perhaps not just block everything, because we have numbers we need to hit here,
Right.
and we're not going to hit them if you're blocking legitimate, potentially legitimate people just to err on the side of caution. That's not going to work for
Yeah.
us.
Great advice, Jordan. Yeah, I feel like, hopefully a lot of folks in the audience are sharing some of these things here and feeling the importance. But I think that I really like how you've like coined this whole topic about, like look at the traffic. This maybe isn't like the number one problem on your list, but it should be something that you look at because it's not getting any better. It is getting pretty
Oh,
wild
it's
out
getting
there.
worse. It's getting
Yeah,
worse.
100%. Awesome, Jordan. This has been super fun, really eye-opening for me personally, especially doing the research for some of this stuff. And we'll put out links to check, and folks that are on the enterprise side can look at some of the tools that your team is building. It was really cool to hear like how you're like dog feeding some of that yourself in your work. But we got one last question for you. As you know, we ask this to everyone that comes on the show. You're obviously a marketing leader and marketing operations professional, but you're also a home renovation hobbyist, a forest trail builder, a gardener, animal lover, and a bunch of other stuff. Also, one question we ask every guest on the show is, how do you decide what deserves your energy at any given moment? And what's your personal system for staying aligned with that and what actually makes you happy?
Great question. I think the biggest of all cliches, work-life balance, is important. I made it, maybe I don't look at it the same way as everyone else, in the sense of, people look at work-life balance as I'm at work or I'm doing my life. And it's like, here I am at work doing my work stuff. And then there's all this other stuff like life that then, deserves my time and attention. Yeah, that's part of it, but I also think having the right mindset, and approach, to your overall human goals while you're at work, is important too. And so the things that I like to do when I'm away from work, well, they help me maintain a balance or a grounded
Mhm.
approach while I'm at my work, and things, like, how can you determine I mean, usually your job determines how much time you have to spend at your job. That's not really something we have in control,
Right.
particularly as an employee. And you know what? Even less so when I had my own business,
Mm.
because you're constantly trying to win clients or making sure you don't let anybody down. I think it's really important to just stay detached. And what I mean by stay detached is, yeah, give it your all, perform really well at work, but at the same time, work is work. It's going to disappear. Nothing we build today, especially in today's environment, you build a website today, it's obsolete 3 days later. So yeah, do your best, but also, I like having that mindset that it's like, I can't really control whether people will like it or not, or whether it's going to be successful or not. So you take it in stride, constantly try and improve, and then move forward. And then, yeah, I'm sure anyone would give the same answer, but when you're not at work, what types of things are you spending your time on? Are they helping you, or are they just the easy things that, um, we can make choices that, uh, perhaps skew to comfort and pleasure more, but then we end up feeling a little bit more pain and misery later, right? Because basically what I'm trying to get at is I don't want to live a life whereby it's like I'm at work suffering and then constantly longing for that, oh, great, it's Friday afternoon and now I can
Yeah.
go party. and then it's like, oh no, it's Monday morning, back to work. I think it's more important to keep a balance and do things, the usual stuff, family, friends, and whatnot. But all these things pass, and so for me personally, obviously, looking a little bit beyond, I've always been interested in different, historical, mythical, religious stuff, whatever it might be. Do what works for you, keeps you grounded, whether that's some form of meditation or yoga or whatever it is that everybody finds their so-called happy place. But I just find that it's most important not to do those things just while you're doing those things, but also I think carrying that with you to your workplace. I remember, like, I don't know, in the last samurai movie, even like you see the Japanese people traditionally like so focused on whatever it is that their craft might be, trying to perfect it, but then also just moving on and doing the next thing. And I think many cultures have done that, not just Japanese, but it always struck me when I see things like that. I think it's a good approach.
Super cool. Really appreciate your answer there, Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for bearing with me with all the internet crap we dealt with today.
Not a problem. Glad to finally meet and do this.
Yeah, this has been super fun. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.